What's up, Sledheads? Garrett here. Today we're going to be talking with the infamous Terry Chui. He was an art director at EA for 15 years and is credited to over 30 different games. SSX and Need for Speed Underground, to name the big ones you probably know. But we're going to be focusing our attention on something from his earlier work, a game of my childhood and my speedrunning career right now, Sledstorm for the PlayStation 1. So thanks, Terry, for being here.
First of all, yeah, thanks for having me on this little video thing. And I just want to say thanks to all the people still playing Sledstorm. Represent.
Yeah.
It's awesome that people are still doing that, and that's great. So yeah, so I'll just give you some background, sort of what my background is. My original background was graphic design and illustration. So as a kid growing up, I was just drawing all the time,
Same.
Star Wars, everything, and making things. And I knew eventually that I would have a career in art of some kind. I knew at a very I wasn't going to do fine art. I was always very interested in commercial art, right? Like how do things get made? How do things get, like companies make things?
Yeah.
So, sort of video game wise, I'm old school. My parents didn't get me the consoles and stuff. I would go to friends' houses and play it. And I remember playing like Intellivision, Coleco, Vision. What is it? I didn't have an NES until I bought one. Like I was like in my late teens, but I think the first thing
I'm actually looking to get one very soon now too, to play Tetris, which is weird.
Old school. I had like an NES. I had a Game Boy. Like this is like high school. I was working. See some skateboards on the wall here. I was working at a skateboard shop. I was finally working part time. I got some money. I had like a Game Boy. I had an NES. I remember just before I got into college, I had even before that, I had like Atari 2600. And then, I had a Sega Genesis, like Sega CD. Like I was pretty deep into games at that point.
Like you had a lot of, is that like 5 consoles now? You said?
Yeah, before I even started at EA. So I was doing graphic design, illustration. I was actually doing a lot of graphics work for like apparel companies and this sort of thing, and restaurants around town. Worked in an animation studio for a year. It was actually the same studio that did Ren and Stimpy, which is kind of cool.
Oh,
right?
cool. Yeah, that's a very very particular type of humor.
Totally. And so that really kind of also gave me my like, wow, not everybody works in like an office, like suit and tie. Like people here are wearing like t-shirts and shorts. They're just goofing around all the time.
As long as it's gotten done, that's the main thing.
Yeah, as long as you got the work done, it just gave me a different sort of viewpoint on kind of the culture of what you could do with art as a career. And then after that year, I worked for different apparel companies and stuff, like action sports, snowboarding gear and stuff.
Cool.
And then I got started at EA. So this was 1995. And it was just when...
So did you reach out to them, or did...
I had a couple friends that worked there as animators. So at the animation studio I worked at, there was a couple friends that applied to be animators. And this was really that interesting time of like things were going to change between like traditional 2D animation, like drawing on paper, to like CG stuff, right? Jurassic Park came out the year before. So people were like, oh my God, this is totally going to change things. And so I had a few friends that were animators and they were working at EA. And they were like, hey, you should try, just see if you can get a job there. And so I got a job there in 95, initially as an interface designer. So this was called like front end interface design, right? So all the menus and character selections and all that kind of stuff. So I did that for 4 years. I worked on FIFA Soccer for 4 years. And this was right when the PlayStation 1 hit. And it was just really, I think I hit it at the right time, because I was able to bring my graphic design and illustration skills to EA. And then at the same time, I was learning all this stuff in 3D. So I was learning how to 3D model. I was modeling characters and vehicles and environments, learning how to do texture maps and stuff. So
what program were you using for that kind of stuff?
For texture work, it was Photoshop. For 3D work at the time, it was like Silicon graphics machines using Softimage, right? So this is like hardcore, like I can't remember they would tell me stuff where it was like, oh, this computer you're using, it costs like, $60,000, or this software you're using costs
It's
like
like,
this.
it's basically a threat. Don't break it. I'm like, okay.
But they paid for the training and everything. And so
Mm-hmm.
I got to be really good with that because I also did like sculpture and stuff at home, right? So I was like sculpting like action figures and stuff.
Oh,
So
crap.
it was like
That's
perfect,
cool.
right?
Yeah.
Perfect sort of combination of skills. And then, yeah, so I worked on those teams, FIFA soccer for 4 years, and I wanted to try to do something else just creatively.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one team, this is really cool. At one point, there's this team that was working on a snowboarding game, and it hadn't really taken off yet. And I was helping them with some early development because I was a snowboarder, and I'm like, I know what look like. Oh, awesome. Yeah. And there was only one snowboard game out at the time from Japan. It was called Cool Borders.
Yeah. I've seen that. It's like right beside like Sledstorm usually when I'm like at any game store. It's interesting. Right. It's always right beside it for some reason. For me.
It's like it was very, this is like pre Tony Hawk and all that, right?
Yeah.
So it's like very early days of action sports. And, here I am working for this, software company that primarily does, big sort of team sports products, right?
Mm-hmm.
They, at the time, were working on FIFA soccer, NHL, triple play baseball. John Madden, I wasn't done there. I think it was done in the LA or the Redwood Shores Electronic Arts Studio. But obviously, it's like this was like their bread and butter. So for people to come in and say, "Oh, you should really do action sports," they're like, oh, "Who's going to buy this?" Right?
Yeah.
But things were changing. I mean, you think about that time, and if you got like little 12-year-old kids that are skateboarding or snowboarding or riding BMX bikes, like this is just like, and I think their audience changed from like, oh, it's like the late teens, college, Madden players to like, it shifted younger, right?
Yeah, that's when the whole blow up of esports was. I mean, not esports, like extreme sports for. For a while, it was just like any video game was like always kind of arcadey or it was a sports game. There was no like anything really related to like extreme sports. So that's when it was booming.
And in terms of what's relatable to kids, like if they weren't on, playing, if you kind of had kids that were, not into team sports, what are they doing? They're riding BMX bikes and skateboarding. So it seemed like a natural. And also you got to remember 95 was the first year that the X Games hit. Okay. So for that on TV, right? Like, people doing, tricks on BMX bikes and like skateboards, like on primetime TV, that's huge, right? This is I'm and I grew up skateboarding in the 80s. So to see something of that level on like network TV is pretty huge. So so basically to go back to the snowboarding thing, I did early development on SSX. So I was doing some different pitches for the game, and I was doing designs and working with a couple designers and producers and programmers on very early development of what SSX would be. Then during that time also, the team that was working on the Reboot game, I don't know if you remember, but EA made a Reboot game based off the TV show.
I've heard it, but I'll have to look it up though.
It's like a CG TV show. There's like CG character. It's pretty cool for its time. And that show was made by Mainframe in Vancouver. And so they were like, they should make a game. So they made this game. And in that game, you played as Bob, who was this character who rode like a hoverboard, right? So again, it was like, oh, cool, engine, action sports stuff.
Yeah.
So I was continuing to work on FIFA. I was helping out on SSX. And then they knew that I wanted to work on, sort of like just use my skills more. And I know that at the time there was like a bit of like an internal battle of like, which team is going to get me kind of thing.
Yeah.
Whatever. I was a bit of a hockey.
So wait, what? It was between Cool Boarding and SSX? Like you were...
No. Cool Borders was a game made in Japan by a different company. Okay. It was basically these two producers, like one of the producers for the SSX, what would be SSX, and then the team that was working on had just finished Reboot.
Okay.
And so, there's sort of like a bit of a tug of war there. And then I got to work on Sledstorm. And how that all started was there was like a designer and an artist and a programmer that had worked on Reboot, and sort of just, in between projects, there's always this like, sort of downtime, right? And it's probably not as like structured as it is now, where it's like, okay, you guys got like 6 weeks to like come up with something. And, it was very cool back then. And we were still, this was like early days of games where you could like, and I did, I worked on probably like a half dozen projects where me and a group of people would come up with like a game concept, do some concept art. Maybe we had a program help us with a prototype, and we would like present it to, executive producers and say, hey, we got this idea for this. Like, do you think that has any legs, right? It's a little bit more difficult to do that now, or it's done in a more
you have to go
way.
through like 10 more loops to actually get to those people to even say, ask.
Totally. And back in the day, it'd be like, oh, let's spend 2 weeks and, just like stay late and have pizza and like try to make this little thing, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And so I remember at the time, Jules Burt was the producer, and Tristan Brett was the artist, and Adrian Crook was a producer / designer, and Tom Heath was a programmer, and he was out of the UK. And Heath came up with that physics engine of the snowmobile on the snow thing.
Oh.
So it's just
he's the mastermind behind the speedruns, basically.
Yeah, of how it feels, absolutely. And I remember they had made a few demos, just like demo tracks. There was like not much in the world.
The Pizza Hut demo disc?
No, way before this.
Oh, way before. Yeah, I mean,
I have that though. I do remember. This is way early days. Like we're talking like a blank,
it was just like there was like no walls basically.
There was very little environment. It was just to kind of prove things out, right? Yeah. And even very early on when I played it, I was like, this has got legs, man. I'm like, how when you play a game and when you play a video game,
I know that feeling.
You grab the controller and you're like, there's games where you're like, this will take me like an hour to like wrap my head around this.
Yeah.
And then there's games like a Mario Kart or something when you pick it up and you're like, oh, I get it. You steer left and right, and there's gas and stop. And
it's just like the tracks are going to be a little bit different. I just got to adjust to that. But other than like movement, like cool.
You feel it is what I'm getting. Like you feel like this is predictable. This is what I would think this would do. Yeah. And Tom really got that with the physics very early on. And so he... we had this demo, and I remember it getting pitched to executives and stuff. Sorry, there's a on my thing. I'm just turning it off. You're good. Got pitched, and then it started to gain more traction. So a few more people got added to the team, and I was added to the team. And so basically, I can't remember the time frame, but not long after that, it was like, oh, great, we're gonna make this like snowmobile racing game. And I remember a funny thing. At one point, it wasn't going to be so much like, it was a racing game, but it was going to be like, I can't remember those bad reality TV shows where it was like, when animals attack or something.
The most extreme or something like that.
Yeah. Like sort of like like the Matterhorn at Disney or something. It's like, like.
So it's going to be like more like an experience than a racer.
Right. So there'd be racing, but there'd be these like other, catastrophic things that'd be happening.
That's what I want to see if there was a remake. So we'll get to that later.
Absolutely. And I don't know, I can't remember what the decision was, but it was just it was like, no, you know what? Let's make it about the racing, right? Let's just stay. Yeah. This is what we're good at. We make sports games. Let's do this. And also, we got to remember, this is like, what is this? Like 3 years into the PlayStation 1? Like it was early. I mean, even when you play it now, I haven't played, I don't have a PS1 anymore. But watching some of your guys' videos, I'm like watching all the draw-in that's happening and the frame rate. It's very early days of people. I remember when we first got a console, we would make a game run on it, but because the code and stuff wasn't very efficient, or maybe the art wasn't very efficient, it would just kill the frame rate and it would just dive down, or there'd be. Yeah. So it took a while to get that stuff solved, but I remember, yeah, we switched from the animal thing to like a strict, racing game.
That's interesting. So, like, what animals are we talking? Like animals, just like a snow leopard comes out and just like what?
Like a bear,
a bear, just
wolves would chase you or something. So I think like the ram and the rabbit are kind of like, sorry, I keep getting these pop-ups. The ram, the goat, and the rabbit are sort of like a little bit of leftover kind of Easter eggs.
Yeah, that's the funny thing. The goat's bluff has a ram on it. We kind of we're like.
I modeled those animals. So.
I was gonna ask you. That's so funny. And it's like, what are they? How many polygons is the ram? Probably like 32.
That was something I was actually really good at, and that was one of the reasons why I was brought onto the team. I also was brought onto the reboot team later in production because they were having like frame rate issues. So I was really good at like making really lean models, using really small textures, being really clever in the ways that I would use textures to just make the game run more efficiently. So I was brought in on the team to kind of consult on that a little bit. And I did a little bit of artwork for them. And so I think that was sort of one of my like, hey, we should get Terry on this game because we got a lot of sleds, we got a lot of characters and all this stuff. So, so I basically came onto that team. And I remember we moved buildings. We used to be at this sort of where EA first started. And then we had moved to this new building. And the team just started getting bigger and bigger. And my primary goal or my primary responsibilities was 3D modeling for the sleds, 3D modeling for the characters, some 3D modeling for props and things. So like some of those animals or some of the props.
I was thinking, at first I thought it was just like the art for like the menu, like for picking the characters. So I was like,
I started at EA doing that, but eventually I was doing, creating actual assets.
Yeah.
And there was another artist, David Adams, that worked on the front end, but I think I established some of the initial look for it and some of the icons and stuff. And then I did all the character drawings as well too. We were full steam ahead. And at that point we were making the game.
Yeah. What was your inspirations for like your art style? Was there a specific game that you kind of like based off of, or was it?
No, I didn't really base it. I mean, I always sort of take what the goals of the project and the team were and try to make that work and try to give people options, right?
Yeah.
One of the key things was that, we had a really tight, cohesive team. We didn't want to make the artwork. I think we learned a lot from the team's experience on Reboot to like not make like, hey, let's use these like giant textures and these giant models. Like, at that time, in game development, at least at EA, where I was working, you always had programmers trying to like make the best code that they could. And you had the artists always like trying to make the best artwork they could. But sometimes it's hard to get those two things to mesh together, right?
Yeah.
So like, you'd have, they're making this racing game, and it'd be like, why is this car like whatever 10,000 polys or something? when at the time you couldn't have that, right?
Yeah.
So
frame rate becomes an issue, and Sledstorm does good with frame rate. There are some drops every once in a while. I'm not really sure what causes it usually, but I really do see that the game was focused more on the engine to be smooth and that the racing just feel right and not like have crazy stuff happening around you.
Totally. Yeah. So in terms of like art, functionality wise, I wanted to just keep everything very efficient, very lean. I was, at the time, I was into like BMX bikes, BMX racing. So there was sort of that culture coming in. And like I said, X Games had kind of popped around like 5. So there was that whole sort of vibe. Sorry, just to go back to like the BMX thing. There was a lot of videos, like, like in skateboarding and BMX action sport. They're always like, back then you would buy like a VHS tape, like, whoa, look at this cool company made this cool video with all these pro riders. So at the time, there was a series of videos called Sled Necks. And it was like...
Why is it not Sledheads, like Sled Necks? I've heard of that too.
And I remember, I think there was like a few, there was like 2 or 3. And it was all like either guys, doing crazy things in races or like jumping off cliffs. But that was really inspirational for the game, right? In terms of like, we would try to copy some of the things,
Yeah.
either you're doing. So I was bringing my sort of like BMX and X Games kind of inspiration to like, so like all the tricks that you see are all very like motocross or BMX influenced.
Yeah.
In terms of the styles of the characters, like I was always really influenced by like Street Fighter, right? So
yeah,
like,
I can feel that.
Like, you go through like your character select and be like Ken, Ryu, something.
Yeah.
And like these sort of like illustrations, but same thing. Like if you notice, it's like we have like one piece of artwork that's the same one all the way through because we didn't want to blow up the game with a ton of. That's not what was really important, right? Like the front end, like the important stuff was getting the game to be really efficient. So
you don't have enough time to even like focus on your character when you're racing. You're like looking straight ahead, like for just sidetrack. But if you're like streaming this game and trying to read chat at the same time, doesn't work out. You're gonna crash.
It was just really focused on the game, and I think it's one of the. I keep saying this, you'll keep hearing me say this, but like, it was one of the best teams that I worked with because everyone was so focused and on the same page of like, we've got to get this game to be smooth, to make it feel good, to make it feel predictable. Like this is how a snowmobile would react. And that's what matters the most. So everybody got along on the same page in that regard. Like we didn't have like, the prima donna programmer or the prima donna or something like, oh, I don't want to do this or
like
that. That did happen at EA.
Yeah.
Right, where you'd be like,
how big was the team again? How many people?
Team?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't remember exactly.
Ballpark, like under 30 or?
I think like core development wise. So like when you talk about like producers, designers, programmers, and artists, and like maybe like a project management person.
Yeah.
That was 30 for sure. But as an aside, you have like all your quality assurance testers.
Yeah.
Your video production, marketing, and all that. That's on top of that, right?
Yeah. So another. But you're saying like everybody was just like on the same page. Like there's no real like conflicts of like, no, we should really go this route. We should, everybody just kind of said, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's go with that.
Yeah. We had a good vision for the game. But and then for the artwork, primarily for the characters, I really wanted to, this is just a trick, that I learned, in art school. And then also just, you see it used in a lot of games where like, I would draw out like the silhouettes of each of the characters. And I tried to come up with just kind of like an archetype for each one where like, oh, this is like the little, the dainty girl. And then this is like the hardcore tattooed motocross guy. And then this is like the big giant, big muscle guy. And this is somebody else. So I tried to just have like different scales. Now that didn't necessarily always come across in the characters because
they're all the same.
Yeah, we're using the same model. We're just putting different
skins on them. Yeah.
But that's what was efficient, right? Like, and same thing, when you've got whatever it is, like 6 sleds or something running around.
Yeah.
Having all that different geometry. We had people that had worked on like Need for Speed and other racing games. Like, look, when you have a track with like a lot of cars and they're all different geometries and there's physics going on, this is gonna like really bog down the frame rate. So we really tried to keep that in mind.
Simplify it. Yeah. Really smart. Let's go ahead and get into, was there any cut content from the game that you can show?
I gotta tell you, so one of the things that I was looking for was, and I found it, I have this like external hard drive thing or something. This is like disclaimer, like pre-EA,
It's just like a drive, literally a drive from a computer.
It was like a backup that I had for art, like because we had moved studios and because sometimes we would change computers and stuff. And this is also like I had I would use an old Macintosh, a Mac computer, Apple computer. And I can't remember when the years was, but like somewhere around like, 2002 or something, like basically the studio got rid of all the Apple products for what, but yeah, somewhere in that process in the 90s, it's like, oh, you're moving to this next other floor, or you're moving to this thing. And so I had this backup with this artwork on it, but like I have
You lost it?
No, I have the drive,
Oh,
but I have no like computer now that has that port, for
there's probably a converter out there somewhere.
probably, yeah, like with
Yeah,
some weird cable type, right? But like, and again, I can't, I don't know if there's anything on it, but that's specific to Sledstorm, but it
yeah,
was during that. And
yeah.
but I mean, I remember having like just tons of drawings. Like in my cube, I would have these like what do you call it, like foam core boards,
Yeah.
and I would do all drawings, or I'd gather all this reference material for the characters, and I would like pin them up and have people. We'd have meetings and we'd look at
Hmm.
them. Um, but yeah, like in terms of like cut content, the biggest thing I can think of is like that whole animal when animals
Yeah,
attack things.
that is really big. Were there any characters like that? Like you, were there going to be more characters, and you guys were just like, "That's enough." Or
I
was it
don't
just kind of like,
know. It was pretty lean. It was pretty lean. I I think they wanted to at one point look into like licensed like snowmobile things, but
ah,
they never that never happened for some reason. So that's why we just came up. I came up with our own kind of
yeah?
brand.
Was there a brand in specific that you based your like design off of, or was it kind of like you just looked at one, glanced at it, and then just kind of said, "All right,
It was just a generic snowmobile shape, and it
yeah,
again was like, how many polys can I make this out of? It was like
yeah,
really lean.
yeah,
And I remember at the time, you can correct me if I'm wrong. The only thing, like, so at the time, like I did the rig, what I, the rigging for it too. Like
yeah,
back created a skeleton for the sled, so
hmm,
it was essentially like a character. So there was like the body of the sled. You'd have the two skis, so they could have like independent suspension, right? So
hmm."
skis could tilt and they could go up and down independently. So
Well, in
you
the
had all
game, they only go like left or right. They never
this.
go
Oh, they
up or
don't.
down.
They don't.
No.
I thought. I thought they did.
In the demo, the Pizza Hut demo, the sled tread actually lowers down, and it
Right.
shows that the character pushes off, like they're getting
Right.
airtime. But that's
Right.
not in the not in the actual release.
Okay, because I do remember rigging that, like putting in like the
Yeah,
bones or the like the track part, right?
yeah,
And I may also, but you got to remember too. I'm talking about stuff that's like 22
yeah,
years old,
yeah,
and so it's a little fuzzy on the details. And also, we worked on Sledstorm for the. I know we're going to get into this,
yeah,
potentially later.
yeah.
But, the Sledstorm for the PlayStation 2.
Hmm.
And so that so there's some details for me that might be crossing over, but
Yeah,
yeah,
because it's the
I
same name.
in terms of like a behind the scenes sort of like feature Easter egg or something.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, the whole like when animals attack is really funny because we have like an inside joke of like saying that if you're in last place for like too long, Sasquatch will come out or the Yeti will come out and like eat you. Like we kind of throw that around to see if like people that are just coming back to the game and see if they can believe it. They're like, oh, it does, and then they'll go play it, and then they won't.
I also make like little, like when we would pitch ideas or whatever, I would always make like a little like jewel case with like a pack art mock-up on it.
Hmm.
I remember making one. I think it said sled storm when animals had like had two sleds,
Yeah.
like racing or jumping, and then it had like a bear behind it.
Behind them. Oh
But
man,
yeah, I remember like
I
that.
would pay good money for that.
We thought it was funny, but like we sort of had a feeling that it wasn't going to get taken seriously, right? So
Yeah, yeah, that was probably a good choice, but I mean, that would have been a really funny, little like, yeah, Easter egg or something like you can unlock like one track that it has like animal attack mode or something like that.
right. Yeah.
On the waypoint, there was a couple that were saved that had like the bios of where the like characters were from and like what they're all about.
Or see if I can find anything like that. Like
Okay.
I probably contributed some stuff to that, right?
Okay.
Like sometimes I would write like little, um, like this is the snowboarder and he's from Canada or whatever, right?
Yeah, that
Like
J. Yeah,
some
yeah.
loose descriptions. And then sometimes I would sort of be like inspired by people, right? So like
Yeah.
Is it Ryan in the blue and white and gray? Is that his name?
Yeah, Ryan. Yeah, he's in the blue.
I sort of loosely based him on like Ryan Nyquist, who is like this BMX BMX guy, and so he had like blonde hair, and he would always be wearing these like Oakley sunglasses. that was sort of like, oh, he was going to be like the motocross kind of guy, right? Like
I got those vibes. I played with Ryan quite a bit growing up.
Yeah, but that's where I just tried to make like, okay, like Nadia was like a jet ski, expert or something, right? So it's like, oh,
that's cool.
Relatable, sport that I could bring someone in, or there was like the snowboarder bring in. And then there was like this. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it, but like we got this letter from, so like Gio is this like, oh, I was like this big
big buff guy from New York. Yeah.
And so the idea was just like, oh, he's gonna do anything to like get through traffic because he's that's he's a taxi cab guy. So like
he's got a taxi kind of aesthetic going. I just put the two and two together.
But it's a yellow snowmobile.
Yeah.
And with a yellow checker, and we got in trouble. I would say we got a letter from a company, and they were like, you can't do that. That's our color. And I was like, what? And we had to explain it. So here's what it is. So like in motocross, if you look really carefully, and in a lot of racing, motorsports racing, it's like, like Honda is red, Kawasaki is green, Yamaha is blue. I can't remember what the other, KTM is like orange or something.
Kind of like Ferrari's red,
Yeah, right. And so like everyone's got these like signature colors, and they don't can't patent or copyright green or whatever.
Yeah.
But you can't for example, Ferrari, they probably have a patent on like Ferrari red, like that code, that paint that's specific to their car, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, we kind of got this letter like, hey, you can't have a yellow snowmobile because this company owns yellow snowmobiles. And so I had to do all this
it's like, well, do you want to pay? It's like we can. Well, actually, I mean, it would be free advertising for them if you have it on there.
That's what you would think, yeah. But licensing is a whole separate. Like when I was working on Need for Speed, we would have a person in the licensing department actually approach like Toyota and go, look, these are the cars we want to put in the game. How much does it cost us? How much does it cost you? Is it a pro bono thing? Like they worked that all out. But for this, they weren't based on anything real. So I had to create this whole legal thing of this is not based on this. It's yellow because it's a taxi cab. Look at the black and white checkers. If you look closely on his seat, I had beads on the seat, as though it's like a beaded seat cover.
Is that only on?
It's only on his sled.
Really? So wouldn't that be more textures added to Geo?
No, it's a texture on his sled.
Oh, it wouldn't affect the. Okay, it's just a different texture based than the other racers all have, just like a different. I haven't looked at that yet. I'll have to check that.
Kind of like how a taxi driver would put a beaded thing on his seat to cool or whatever. So I had to do all this stuff to show we're not copying anything. It's it's a taxi cab, and then they backed off, right? Because
that's funny. Even for that time period, snowmobile companies, I wouldn't imagine they're looking for video games to try to.
I think
sue.
Also at this time, if you remember, there were Winter X Games, and they had Snowcross. Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of their motocross, but for snowmobiles. And so it was a similar thing. You had the snowmobile companies now kind of doing what was being done in motocross. So I'm sure there's dollars there, it's being in a form of media. So obviously they're just trying to protect what they were trying to protect. Right.
Yeah.
But our thing was separate. It was not influenced by that at all. Right.
Yeah.
We weren't trying to, we weren't doing a licensed manufacturer snowmobile game. It was fantastical. Right.
Yeah. They should have, I mean, if they, and this was when the game already came out, right?
Yeah. I think so, yeah.
So, when they see that all of the snowmobiles are exactly the same, and then there's just one that was the color of theirs, and they're like, hey, that's ours because it's our color. It's well...
Yeah. It's kind of random.
Yeah, that is kind of... That's kind of a stretch. Obviously, I think they just saw like the character list and then saw that sled and then they're like, oh,
It's
like,
yellow.
it's
Yeah.
yellow. That's funny. I guess let's hit the let's. How do you think the game turned out overall?
I think it was great. It was a really fun game. I think it's one of those things where people first hear about it and they're like, "What? A snowmobile? Like that's so
Yeah.
obscure." But then when you really pick it up and play it, you're like I was talking about earlier, like whether it's a Mario Kart or something, but like just the physics of it, and you're like, yeah, this is really cool. This is what it would feel like, and it
Mm-hmm.
handles the way that I would think it should feel like.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, myself and the whole team was super excited about it, and really happy with the way it done, and it did sort of financially quite well too. I don't have the exact numbers, but like, for a title like that didn't have any sort of celebrity
Yeah.
endorsement, of athlete endorsement, it did quite well. I remember I had the amazing opportunity to go to E3 the year that
Oh wow.
um, before it was released, and now we sort of know like, okay, well, the public can go to E3 and you can see all these things, but
Mm-hmm.
the business side of E3 was that like you would have like the buyers from retailers come, like this is like they're basically making looking at stuff, touching it for real, not
Yeah.
just looking online, and then going, yeah, that looks really promising. They're going to talk to the sales team and they want to pre-order X number of copies for whatever. So like
Oh
I
wow.
remember like there all day, like demoing the game. We would have shifts, like different people come in, but like I would be demoing the game
Mm-hmm.
and like be like some marketing person, be like, oh, hey, Bill, come over and meet Terry. He's like, one of the artists on the team. He designed snowmobiles and characters. He's going to show you Sledstorm, isn't it? And then I would get like, 5 minutes to like, show it to
Explain the
them.
game. Put them on a track. What track would it just be the demo track? Or
Yeah, I think at the time, I don't think we necessarily had the whole thing finished. We probably just had like one specific.
yeah, there is a demo track that's like it's bits and pieces of. It's like a part of Pine Valley, but then like part of some other track, but it's really short. Yeah.
We would just give that to them, and then they would try it, and they'd be like, "Oh, great!" And then they'd go off with the salesperson and be like, "Oh, that's awesome. We're going to order like 20,000 copies." Like, okay,
That's
like,
awesome.
Like they're like standing, for whatever, like 5 hours. Like we take shifts, we get a little break, and then we'd have to come back. But it'd be like myself, a couple people on the development team, marketing person. But I don't know. I actually tried to find pictures of this, and I couldn't find pictures of it. But it was really cool. I remember when, like, I'd been to E3 before, and like this sort of like budget demo thing. There'd be like a table with like 4 TVs and 4 PlayStations and some controllers and a sign, and like that's all you get. And then you would see like, you go to the Sony booth and you'd be like, oh, Twisted Metal, and the truck, there'd be that ice cream truck on it. Like people are spending big money to make these things, and so we're like, oh, what are we going to get? And it was just really cool for EA to start to have confidence in the game, right? So
yeah,
I remember they sent very early on, and whatever, I was an artist working on the team, but they sort of knew I had a really good sort of visual connection with these cultures, right? Like being snowboarding and skateboarding and whatever, motocross. And so they sent these drawings. They're like, oh, this is what we're thinking. We're thinking of doing this, and it was really cool. It was like it was this giant like sculpted like ice pillar that like at the top it was like this like snow, and then it had an actual snowmobile on it.
What?
With a mannequin like jumping, like doing like a can or an airwalk or something.
Kick out or something.
With like the helmet and everything, and like this was all painted like snow, and then at the base it would like curve down, and then the 4 Bs were like in the console.
Oh my god.
Yeah. And then I think there was seats. There might have been like these sort of fake ice bumps or something, and so people could sit down and they would and this thing was huge. I mean, it was like
I wonder where that is and how much it is now.
And I remember after E3 they were like, what do you want to do with it? And we just didn't have a room to keep it in our space, but we totally would have kept it. But I remember like we had at the time and it's still at E3. I haven't gone in many, many years, but like it'd be like, hey, Sony's hosting a party and like Beck is playing, or like these big recording artists would come and perform. And I remember, do you remember the band Hanson, right? Those three kids? The bop,
yeah.
Yeah, see, I know the song now. They showed up and they were at the booth for like an hour. Like
playing Sledstorm?
Yeah, they were playing Sledstorm for like an hour.
So was it like they all had their own TV and they were playing against each other?
Yeah, they were all racing.
It was like a net play. Oh, that's
It was like no. Sorry, you're right. It was. How did it work? It must have been individual single players or something.
Because we can't. I don't think you can do net play with. It has to be split screen.
Yeah. So, but like they were there for so long, so like it was really cool to sometimes like have these celebrities come in, and we were just like, we're just this little game, like. But it was like a big deal, right? Like it was people that hadn't seen it before to see it for the first time, for there to not have been any kind of snowmobile racing game. It was, quite earth shattering, So
that Sledstorm is the first console snowmobile racing game. I've been saying that for years, but I'm like, is there really one?
I think there was others after, but I think we were the first.
Was there a PC snowmobile racing game? I don't think there was. Not that I can find. I've done some research because I'm always like telling people like it's the first snowmobile racing game on console, and I'm confident about that, but I don't want to say like ever because there's probably an arcade like version of something. But
I don't, as far as I know, like console at the time, it was definitely one of the first.
And still one of the best, I'm gonna say. Were you any good at the game?
I was pretty good. I think I was pretty good. I was again focused more on like the characters and the sleds. And so like the track building team, the artists there were super good, right? Because they built tracks, right? And good. I remember at the time, like I don't think every artist had like a dev station. So how it would work is like you would have a TV with like this sort of like Uber development version of a PlayStation, or it might even be like a PC or something, right? Like it had like the boards or whatever in it. And then you could like build the game and then test it right there. So like, later in my career at EA, like every artist or every programmer had some sort of dev station on their desk. But like in those early days, it wasn't necessarily like that, right? Like I would load the, upload the artwork to the network drive where the game was being built. I'd have to talk to a programmer. They'd have to like build the game, right? They have to let it compile for 20 minutes or whatever the hell it was. And then it'd be like, oh, look here, you can look at your thing now, right? So whereas like, I think the track artists either, maybe one of the track artists, had a dev station and then the others were building assets to give to that person, or maybe they had two or three between them. I don't think everybody had one at the time. So definitely the artists that work on the tracks, they were much more.
Because they had to make sure it was. I would love to get in contact with them. I think I went on LinkedIn. I was trying to get in contact with anybody and couldn't get anybody to respond. But then you reached out, so that's why I was like, my way in. Yes.
I don't even know I don't even remember what I was looking for. I was just like on YouTube, and sometimes I just like remember. I'll be like, oh, I remember a song or something. I'm like, oh. Like,
remember Sledstorm, that game I made a bunch of artwork for?
I was like, do I even, and I'm like, oh my God, there's all these like, videos. And it's funny because I did this a while ago, the same thing. I was, whatever, I'm a bit older now, so I just get nostalgic and I'm like, oh, remember that thing I worked on? And I, like a while ago, I looked up Need for Speed Underground.
Oh, great game.
Thank you. And someone that had a video on it, and I just chimed in, because I would see people like, oh, this is my childhood, this is this game. I'd be like, oh, I'm so glad you like it, like I worked on that. And they were like, oh my God, what did you do? And I'm like, I was the art director for the cars, and like all the modifications, like all the graphics on the sides, the cover art card, that's like I designed that.
Just a quick flex. coming
it's
out?
a little and like I
Why
got to
not?
work with, for that one, I got to work with Craig Lieberman, who was the technical director on the Fast and Furious. So he came up and he gave us like a rundown, and I sat with him and worked on the cars and stuff. And then it's funny because I showed him like, oh, these are all my like drawings for like all the body kits and things you can get.
Yeah.
These are like the wide body, and these are the exclusives.
Mm-hmm.
And like after that meeting, he was like, you should come work for me. You should
making that dumb snowmobile racing game.
Yeah, but that was like me. That was really cool because I'm like, wow, this is like, a legit person that works in the movies on this stuff, and like they appreciate what I did and said, this is totally legit. Like you could totally do this, right? Like so, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah,
that is a good feeling.
Yeah.
So, did you guys have any like? I'm sure the developers like had some sort of like tournament they did like after they're like, all right, everything's done. Let's do 4-screen, split screen, like races and anything like that happen.
I'm sure it did.
I
don't remember. Yeah. Like for it being long ago.
That's funny. So yeah, were there any Easter eggs or modes in the game that were like that are in that I'm probably not aware of, or you think?
I don't usually, when with game development, like any kind of stuff like that is not on the final build, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even if it was like I remember on Sled Storm for the PS2, we had like lots of sort of other crazy experimental like test tracks or tracks with like different jumps and things so that we could sort of see how far we could push things. None of those things usually end up in a final like published build, right? It's like you put as little, you just make it as lean as possible before you get those discs manufactured. So yeah, as far as I know, there's nothing like, there's no like secret track or
there's no like faces of the workers in the side of the mountain or
yeah. I don't think I don't remember. Like I know when I worked on FIFA, there would be like these like unlockable like teams, like these super strong teams, but they would have like all the developers' names and like our hair colors and all that kind of stuff, right? You essentially like got an opportunity to put yourself in the game. But yeah, for Sled Storm, I don't recall that.
What about the eagle for Eagle Ridge? Is there actually an eagle there, or because I've never seen the eagle? There's theories that he's like always above you and you can never really see him.
I want to say I may have modeled one. I recall making a few animals, but like for me, it's one of those things where it's like at the time, later in my career at EA, I got more involved with design and development. At that point in my career, whatever, I was only at EA for 3 years or 4 years. And so it was like, oh, you make this asset and you give it to the team and, you don't know if they're going to use it or not, or like, it's like, it's also not I can't push my agenda, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, I could make like 50 animals and the producer would be like, or the designer or the program, like, this is way too heavy. We can't have this. We can't have all these. You can't have a herd of like 20 goats running around. Some designer or producer is at certain points can just cut it and go, look, that we can't have that.
Yeah.
And like, I may get, I may have an opportunity to discuss that. I may not, but also like, I'm not the main designer.
It's not really your say. Yeah.
It's not my role. Right. So, and as a commercial artist, it's like, you get very used to like, look, I'm passionate about what I do, but I'm paid to be here to like make these things. So that's what I'm here. If I make 100 of them and only 50 get used, that's fine. I'm a commercial artist. I have to be, I'm not a fine artist. I didn't do a fine art painting and it has to be used. It's like, you just, you get very used to that. So like same, later in my career when it's like designing characters or props or things, I remember I worked on this one game, EA Playground for the Wii, which was like a younger kids game, and there was like a Nerf dart sort of shooting game. Right, it's foam darts. We weren't allowed to use
not actually shooting.
So I had to design a foam dart shooter, glacier, that didn't look like any licensed thing, and that looked safe enough to be like a G-rated thing, right? because like our nerd fantasy would be like, yeah, let's make it like a giant crazy, M60 or whatever. Like,
but then it just shoots a Nerf ball.
This is a game for 8-year-olds or 7-year-olds. So like, I think I drew 40 different like foam dart blasters until I'm happy with, so it's like, that's fine. As long as the final one gets made, I don't care how many don't get used. You can't get hung up on that, right? So I was never really hung up on like, stuff not getting used. But the eagle sounds familiar. I do remember making a few animals. I did make a bear for that
Kodiak Canyon. The second track, Kodiak Canyon.
So I remember that, rendering it for that cover. So it's like, I do remember making a bear. I don't know.
Yeah, he actually is the most animated. He like walks, and then he'll do push-ups. He'll go like and then he'll stand up and go and then go back down and then walk around. So, and he's like up on the ledge. Like, you can get to him if you want to, but he doesn't. Yeah, don't do anything when you get up there.
Yeah.
But so you basically were just like, did they tell you what animals they wanted, or do you just like, I'm just gonna throw a bunch of animals at them and see which one?
No, I think we had a list probably.
Yeah. They wanted. Was there any animals that like any penguins or any Arctic? Well, you guys didn't do anything like Antarctic. Actually, you guys did more just like mountainy, kind of up in like, I imagine like Iceland or Switzerland or something like that.
I think I got, for me anyways, I think I just got a list and then I made them, and I honestly don't remember like how many ended up making it in. Yeah, there was definitely a few. Just that fun, when you mentioned Eagle Ridge a while ago, that name actually comes from a mountain near Vancouver. It's actually Cypress Bowl ski area has like a chairlift, and it's called Eagle Ridge. I think that's what.
I never knew that. I never searched it, but that's Eagle Ridge is actually my favorite track because of it has the most dynamic like design, and then has like all these shortcuts that are like absurd that you have to like learn. Is there anything you would have changed if you could have gone back, or is it pretty much everything you made was?
I was pretty happy with everything. I think it's always tough when you think about technology changing, and you're like, well, it'd be great if the draw-in didn't happen, or if the frame rate was thing. I always would have loved if the characters were more unique, right? So that, or if the sleds were more unique. We were able to do that with Sledstorm on the PS2, but obviously on the phone we weren't able to do that. When I think about it at the time, it's like we did a really good job, and we achieved what we wanted to with what we had, right? Which was like, the PlayStation still being fairly new. We definitely pushed it. And so, I was happy with what we achieved.
You keep in touch with anyone else that worked on the game, or
I sometimes I'll run into just people. I still live in Vancouver. The game was developed at EA in Vancouver. I actually live like 2 blocks from the studio, and I have been, about the mid 2000s. And so, but I don't think we like actively like, hey, let's find out what other Sledstorm people are doing. But it is a small world. There's a lot of other game studios in town, and it's been really nice to see actually like, oh wow, this programmer went to this other studio and worked there, but then later they started their own studio or something, right? So it's been really great. People succeed at different places, no matter what they're doing. I know some people have moved on to other areas, even myself included. I've moved on to kind of a different career, right? But it's been fun to touch base, run into people once in a while, and it'll just be happen chance, right? Like we're all just into someone in person, and we're like, oh, holy cow, and wasn't that fun to work on that project, right? So that was really great.
Logan, fire!
Okay, thanks.
She's great.
I'll link to a video where I was like my friend was doing like a what do you call it? it's like the lung association challenge, like, where they like run up a skyscraper to like raise money for lung research, lung cancer or whatever.
No, but that sounds fun.
Yeah. So whatever, I've done that before, and one year I couldn't go, so he challenged people to like, because I make costumes and props and stuff, right?
Yeah. I was gonna get to that. I wanted to hear all about that.
Stormtrooper. So he was like, "Oh, how fast can people get dressed in their stormtrooper costume?" So I was in and I was like, I'm making a video for YouTube. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do the stormtrooper challenge, and I'm timing myself, and I'm like halfway dressed, and she comes in, and she's like, "What's going on? What's going on?
What are you doing? What do you know?" Starts taking the things you're about to put on. You're like, no, I need everything.
I'm like, she's like, I got tickets to the Elsa's Frozen party, and I'm just like, oh, let me finish this thing first, right? So yeah,
doing a speed run, honey. Hold on.
Yeah,
that's funny. So you also worked on the version for the PlayStation 2. Do you know why it wasn't called Sledstorm 2?
The entire team asked that question. I think at the time, because as it was explained to me from like marketing or whatever, it was like, oh, the PlayStation 2 is like this is like the new thing. So it's kind of like relaunching that franchise. And also, if you recall, the first Sledstorm was not like, it might have just been before SSX. And then SSX was branded with like EA Sports Big, which was like the action sports thing. Yeah. So then when it came to time for us to work on like that sequel, they were like, okay, well, it's going to be on the PlayStation 2, and it should be part of the EA Sports Big brand.
That's what I always assumed. Yeah.
Like a relaunch, right? So it'd be like, oh, it's now Sledstorm, EA Sports Big. Yeah. And we're like, okay, why don't we call it 2? Like, because we felt that we could build on the momentum that we had with the first one.
Yeah, that's why it's kind of like a slap in the face to the first one, because it's just like,
I think the team really wanted the 2, and I don't have it, but I just brought this along. Like I found a video of me talking about Sledstorm 2 on YouTube after we started.
Is it public?
Yeah, it's on. Yeah, I'll send you the link.
Yeah, send me that one.
It's like one of the producers like, hey, it was the producer on SSX. It was like, oh, like we've got this other game in development called Storm for Esports Big, and this is Terry, one of the art directors. He's going to show you. So like I walked through the sled designs and stuff.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I want to see that.
I start talking about some of the track things, and so just so you know that we weren't like making stuff up. Like we got to, Vancouver's about 2 hours away from Whistler, BC. So we got to go on a snowmobile trip to find out what snowmobiles handle, right? So that was really, really cool. So this is the helmet that I wore. So like this is like my old, BMX days helmet. Yeah. I don't have it anymore, but I actually had a Sledstorm 2 sticker that was on here. So when we were working on it, that's what you were saying it was, because that's what it is. That's what it is. So it was more like the marketing, branding people that were like, because I don't know if you remember, there was like you remember like X Games, like motocross freestyle was really big. So there was an EA game called Freak Style, and it was a motocross. It was basically like SSX on motocross bikes, developed by one of the other EA studios. And that was also part of EA Sports Big. So like they were trying to build this like, oh, you have EA Sports, it's in the game, like Madden, NFL, and all this. NHL was like on this side. And then you had, we're going to have EA Sports Big, like all these like extreme sports titles. But it's unfortunate that they, for whatever reason, it just fizzled out. Because I mean, later on, they could have like, they did do some other, I remember there was still some other games that used that brand for a while. But then they just kind of eventually got rid of it. And this was just before like Skate had taken, and like that was huge.
Yeah, it's a good
right?
game.
But I think what they were trying to do with Skate was, it's not like extreme. Like it doesn't have like neon and fireworks and all that. It's like
it's more like push to like creativity and just like unique.
Keep it real. It's street legit, kind of thing, right? And it was to try to compete with a bunch of other skateboarding games at the time. So weird thing. Like the team, I think, wanted to be called 2 because we'd had such a good time on the first one. But
I see it more of like, yeah, if they labeled it as 2, they would be worried that people would go, oh, there was a original, and they would go back and then buy the PlayStation when they're trying to sell for the PlayStation 2 the newest version. So they didn't want this whole like going back, like.
And it was on an older platform, right?
Yeah, it was like outdated technically to them.
So like, here's the new shebang, right? So
yeah,
that's what they're.
That's why I feel it's kind of like demeaning, and that's why we kind of make fun of the PlayStation 2 version, because they're kind of forgetting that the first one even exists, and then yet being like, we would say it's like SSX but on snowmobiles, but
right. So I mean, I do remember that we were at the time trying to make sort of more of a true sequel to Sledstorm, like, you know, very much in the same vein, lots of like
open mountain,
more natural terrain and stuff. And then with the success of SSX and the launch of that EA Sports brand, I remember we had to go back and like kind of like EA Sports bigify it, right? So there was more like production value. I recall I was sort of in charge of like coming up with some of those elements, right? Like all those, like the banners and the fireworks, scaffolds and all this, but then also the presentation with like the announcers and the blimp and making it more like, because the 2 announcers was like, one of them was the guy who plays Scooby or Shaggy on the Scooby-Doo movie.
Oh yeah, I remember looking that up, and I was like, "What in the world? Like, how did they get that guy?" That's so fun.
And then it was Mean Gene Okerlund from like the WWF, like, because they would sort of play off the 2. So I designed those 2 announcer characters, right?
Okay.
So it'd be like it's, you know, I can't remember what the characters' names were, but it was the Mean Gene was like, oh, serious old legit veteran, and I'm like the wild dude, you know, right? So
I just like to skate and snowboard when I get the chance, you know.
But you know, again, that's not necessarily a decision that the team makes, right? Like we can sort of give our feedback to our producer as much as we want, but if the studio and the marketing group says, look, we can't sell this game unless you do X, then X, right? Yeah,
I feel like the PS2 is more focused on aesthetic rather than gameplay, and it really kind of suffers for that, because it's more of like a arcade racer in a way. Like you would take a shortcut and it'd feel like it'd be like magnified, like it would keep you on track, rather than like in Sledstorm, the original, you would just like fall off if you weren't tapping left, right, you know.
Right, there's more dire consequences.
Yeah. So
I think the whole the EA Sports big thing was also like, it was definitely more arcadey, right? They didn't, you know, I don't want to use the word dumbed down, but it was like, you know, it's like a Hot Wheels track. Like, the car's not going to go off the track; it's just going to go. So it is what it is, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of it was like more like bells and whistles, trying to kind of keep you entertained with like what's happening, but yet you're racing at the same time. In its own category, I'd say it is a good game for what it is. I just didn't play it growing up as a kid, so I'm kind of when I'm used to playing that version and then going to that, I tried it for like, I don't know, a couple nights, and I just couldn't, like, there was too much happening, and like I didn't feel like I was in control, and that's like the big thing for me when it comes to a racer. Do you want to show off any of the things you have there?
So the jersey, of course, this was so this is available to anybody. This was just for the team, and so this all the developers, all the people that worked on the team got it. It's got a 99 on the back because that's the year it came out, right?
Oh, man.
And I don't know.
I'm gonna make a mock-up.
Let's see if I still have it. I may have a second one. I don't know. We'll see.
Put that up on eBay. I'd be the highest bidder for sure. I've got my collector's edition and original.
Now, sorry, which was the one you had the white?
That's the collector's edition.
Oh, is this like? Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah, it's just white.
That's just the original.
Does it say anything different on it, or is it just like, does it say like a serial code or probably?
No, I don't know.
Does the back look exactly the same?
That's what it looks like on the back.
I may have you send me a picture of that later, just so I want to see if it's any different than the original copy.
And apparently, I can still register for something.
Yeah. I like how it says, visit sledstorm.com for more information.
Yeah.
It's just like,
it's
not anymore.
Really neat because, because my background was graphic design, I sometimes would get to work on, collaborate with like the marketing group on the covers and stuff, right? So for games, I got to do that. Like Need for Speed, even Sledstorm 2, I think. Like sometimes I would help another group with like renderings for the graphics and stuff.
It has a good cover. I'll give it that.
Yeah, this is these are given out to the development team, right? So it's got my there, and it's basically like little sort of pride,
that's beautiful.
Trophy.
Yeah.
So people would get these at the end of the project after it's shipped. So that one's really cool.
Is that the actual like manual like in there, or is it just like a cover?
No,
that's a manual.
This is all real. This is all like, that's an actual game in there, and that's I don't know if you can see the thickness, but that's the actual manual.
Yeah, I can see it now.
So later, I will tell you later, maybe like by like the late 2000s, they were fake. They weren't real. They were just like printed covers, right? So lame, but
that's lame.
Real thing. And like, so a lot of games that I worked on later, I wouldn't keep them. Like I would take them apart. I would use the frames for other things. But like, this is one of the few, like this, Need for Speed, and this upcoming one, they're ones that I kept, right? This is the one too.
Sick. Oh, they actually put the game, like the whole thing in there. Dang.
Yeah, the whole thing. So the disc is real. The disc is real, and the box is real. It's like
that's beautiful.
Box. Same thing. It's So this was like a nice.
That's really nice. They didn't really have to do that. They're just like. That really goes to show EA was like really on top of. Do they do that anymore for their? They have so many people working on on their teams now. I would assume they would be like.
They might. I mean, I haven't been there since 2010.
Yeah.
So it's been a while, right?
Yeah.
But it was definitely a fun experience working at that studio. Yeah, I was there for 16 years, and it was just kind of unfortunate. They kind of like, there was a change. There was a change in management, and they kind of laid off like this whole side of the building. So it was a bit of a bummer. I was bummed about that, because it's like I'd given a lot to the company, and I really enjoyed working with the people there and working on those games. But it at the end of the day, it's a public company, right?
Yeah.
And doesn't unfortunately matter so much like how passionate you are. Or, I felt I had a very like Liam Neeson and Taken, I have a very specific set of skills.
Yeah.
Like, no, but I came from a very unique background where, I had worked in action sports, I'd worked in apparel, graphic design, illustration, character design, worked on environments, 3D interface, modeling. So, and then I was an art director for 10 years. So I felt I had a very diverse career. And
that's a good resume. Like anybody would be like, hey, this is what we want you to work on then.
Yeah. If you look at, whatever, go on Moby Games or whatever, and look at my thing, it's like, this is like, it's not like, whoa, you worked on like Call of Duty 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it's like, that's great too. That sort of like, but for me, if you look at my titles, they're like all over the place.
Yeah.
There's like stuff, there's action sports, there's like kids games, there's mobile games, there's like fitness games that were targeted to women, but like I never, again, just coming from a commercial art background, I definitely worked with artists that were like, how come I'm stuck working on a fitness game? I want to work on the shooter or whatever, but I'm like, look, if you want to be a good martial artist, you have to be like, shouldn't matter what the subject matter is. You need to make that thing the best that it can be. So it doesn't matter. Like, I'm not a snowmobiler, right? Like, I don't, that's not my hobby, right? Like,
same. I don't own a snowmobile and haven't ridden one, but.
Right. But I want to make it the best damn game that it can be.
Yeah.
And same, I can work on a fitness targeted for, older women, but it's like, I'm still going to make that the best it can be because that's what I'm here for.
Yeah. It's all about it's perspective. It's fun to like try to, what is what they, you draw something and people try to guess it.
Pictionary.
Yeah. It's kind of like Pictionary, but like really in depth and very specific. So it's like, is this what you guys like? No? Oh, yep. Okay. Oh, you're thinking this. You should have told me this, but like I understand it's kind of very specific, like way of like describing it. But that's
people even ask me now with what I do now. They'll say, "Well, what is your primary skill set? What is something that you're really good at?" And I'll say, "Look, I can draw. I can make things in 3D. Everything. I can fabricate, but what I'm really actually good at is being a creative problem solver. I come up with creative solutions to solve your problems." And then they kind of go, oh, I get it. Right. And
that's basically everything. Yeah.
Like I've worked with marketing departments on things. I've worked with, game designers on things. And it's like, oh, this is what they're trying to do, but they can't figure out, the solution for that. And it's not necessarily just like an art, like there's definitely artists that I've worked with and they're super talented artists where they'll make something look really, really, really good. Mm-hmm. But that's not necessarily always the solution. Like that's not always the best solution for the problem, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I said earlier, that sort of push and pull that has existed a long time between programmers and artists. It's like it's lessened now because the technology is finally caught up. Where it's like, oh, you want to make a super fancy model? It's got like a bajillion.
Yeah, we can do it.
Make textures and bump maps and spec maps and all that stuff. You can do all that now, and the game will totally handle it, no problem. But back in the day, you'd be lucky to get a 512 by 512 texture on like a 5 poly model, because that's what the game would. That's just what the game could handle, right?
Sure. Do you ever see a chance of a remaster?
Highly unlikely.
Yeah.
It's for something like that to happen, it really takes someone, back at EA to kind of champion that process, right? I don't think that there was enough. It's not like Tony Hawk Pro Skater where it's like, oh, we've remastered the, because there's so many kids that grew up with it and they followed it and it's like they love it, but it's like I don't think we were like that high in the numbers that sort of financially that would make sense. But it is a cool idea.
Yeah, I mean that's my overall like goal, and like I love the game, and that's why I just want to see more people playing it and like enjoying playing it. That's kind of my my overall goal. But my biggest goal is to get it remastered, but if not remastered, then go into development some way myself and make some other game that was kind of like the has a little bit of the influence of the when animals attack, but not really attack. There's just more animals. There's just more diversity. More like if you played any of the Mario Karts, like Mario Kart 8, they have tracks that actually like dynamically change when you're driving. I would love to see one that has like a track that has like icebergs that you ride off, and like it would one lap it would be normal, and then next lap part of the glacier falls off and then flips over, and you have to drive while they're flipping. We can do that now with the amount of processing. So
I know that at the time we did on Sledstorm for the PS2, we did play with avalanches, right? So like you're racing around, and then like it caused an avalanche, and that you don't want to get wiped out by the avalanche, and it potentially changed the terrain. Afterwards. I think we we might have prototyped some stuff like that, but it didn't
make it in. Okay. I was about to say, if that was in the game, I don't remember that part. I mean, I didn't play that far into it, but yeah, I mean, that's another big idea that I'm working on a video that would, like, if the game was remastered, this is what it would look like, and this is what it would need to, like, keep the same and change. And yeah, avalanches is one of those that would, like, really make a timing, like, if you're there too early, then you don't get to ride the avalanche, or if you're too, ride that, middle ground, you'll get flipped by it or something like that. But you can use it as like a speed boost. I mean, there's a lot of ideas I can bounce off you later. But
absolutely.
Let's what are you up to nowadays? I know it's probably Star Wars related. Looking at the back
stuff. After EA, I started a game studio with 2 other friends, and we were working on mobile games for like iPad, iPhone type stuff, right? So we did that for a bit. We did some contract work for other companies. We came out with our own game called Monster Mayhem, which was like a gesture-based game for the iPad. And then, we decided to split off and do our own thing. So I didn't go back into gaming. My daughter's barged into this video a couple times, but we had a kid, we had a daughter, a few years back. So I was full-time dadding and being a full-time dad, and I didn't necessarily want to go back into gaming right away. That's still a potential future. I was actually asked to see if I was interested to go back to EA for a role a few years ago. But I declined it. It was just, I was raising my daughter at the time, and it wasn't really possible. So, but something I've done for a very long time is I've made like costumes and props for myself. And then eventually I started doing stuff like commissions, and, I now do some stuff for film and TV. So I've worked on some local shows that have filmed here. So like, Arrow, Flash, Supergirl, Once Upon a Time, Arena, like making different props or things for them. And then just, sort of little contract jobs will come in, or I just continue making stuff on commission. Cause that way it's sort of like, it's kind of like part-time, it's very hard to do like game development, like part-time.
Yeah. That's like, it's like, we need you to get this done by that date. And you're like, okay, that's going to take a while. I don't know how long actually that's going to take. So, it's hard to like schedule that.
Totally.
Yeah. So with the, so how often do you get commissions, or is it kind of like, is it all cosplayers that are like, or is it people that are just like, I really love Star Wars and I want this,
Yeah, it's cosplayers, collectors. We have a lot of people locally that are part of different clubs. And so for me, it's kind of like 50-50 between like sort of collectors and cosplayers, and the other half is sort of like some film and TV work, which is a lot of fun.
So I imagine your like garage setup is like huge printers everywhere and stuff like
right. There's like 4 3D printers. They're all, so, but I don't 3D print everything. I still fabricate a lot of things by hand. So again, the good skill, like it's back to drawing, right? Like a 3D printer is like a tool. You're just using it in a particular way, but it's not going to do everything for you. So, if you want something to look like, you want something to look
show
like
these
wood,
off.
right? You still want it to look like wood, right?
Yeah,
it's just painted. So, stuff.
So that's actual wood? Yeah.
That's just plastic. It's just plastic. But, so many things are like that. Like this totally looks like wood. But it's not.
I would not. When you're holding it, can you tell it's not wood, or is it?
I can tell, and it's also hollow, right? Because it's 3D print, but it's just painted. Right?
That looks just nice.
Yeah.
So you just paint that by hand on there, and then just kind of.
Yeah. I'll just paint it by hand. Yeah. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, there's lots of creative stuff, lots of commissions and things, and it's fun. It's fun to kind of play in that universe, right? So. But
it's hard with the commissions for if anything like helmet wise. I'm sure that they have to like send in their like actual dimensions of their like head and stuff like that to make sure it's.
if it's someone like online, I'll get them to actually use calipers to like measure their head
Oh shoot.
and distances. Yeah. It's but there's ways of working around.
Yeah.
Right. So I make it work.
Yeah. Do you how do you ask for a price for that? Is it like just by the helmet, or is it just like how sophisticated it is, or is it kind of one of those baseline?
Yeah, I usually ask, someone will say, "Oh, I want a helmet or something for this," and I'll be like, "Okay, is it something that sits on a shelf? Are you actually gonna wear it? Do this?" Because some people just want, like, I have people contact me and they're like, "I have a thing on my man cave wall. It's never going to be picked up. I just want it there."
Yeah.
So that determines kind of what material it's made out of. And then, because sometimes someone might say, "Oh, I need like a knife thing," and it's like, okay, that could be plastic, that could be 3D printed, it could be wood painted to look like metal. Oh no, I want a metal. Okay, now it has to be machined or whatever. That contributes to the cost. So I usually take into account, what, again, I'm problem solving, right? I'm doing creative problem solving. I'm figuring out what their needs are, and then when do they need it, and what their budget is, right? And those are the first few questions I ask. And if they go, "Well, my budget's like $50," I'm like, "I can't do that because that's going to take like a week to do." So.
Well, you obviously don't know how difficult this is.
Yeah, and you get experience you get very familiar with like how long things take. Right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything. You do it the first time, and you're like, "Man, I really undercharged that. Like, I could have definitely made more from that." But it was fun because I learned from like,
sure.
When it's the first time, you're like, I don't really mind like not getting that much money from it because it was having fun making it. I'm sure that's the same for like making it the 5th time. It's like, oh, this is fun.
Well, no, that's definitely how I started with, like, I would make stuff for myself and figure out how long it would take, learn how to use those materials properly, and then eventually I could apply that, right? Yeah.
Well, Terry, I think I could there's so much more that I can talk. Wait, one more little. Do you know why the bunny sometimes respawns, or like sometimes he'll show up on the map and then sometimes he won't? Is there any reason, or do you know?
It was supposed to be like a wild animal, and it's like kind of randomized, right? It's not. Yeah. Want to necessarily make it a consistent thing, and I think sort of like, ethically, we wanted to like move away from the animal. Like, we didn't want to be like, "Over animals, get points."
Yeah, that's why it's like, it's just the rabbit we killed. Every other animal, don't worry on.
It was off the books, right? So, or off the table, so to speak. So, I think they wanted to make it more random rather than having it be a consistent thing.
Yeah, I did a survey and it was like I did the track over and over, and like I said, he showed up, didn't show up. It was probably 50-50, but I was always wondering if there was like something like that like caused it to be that way, like weather conditions. Like maybe if it's snowing, the bunny will come out more. I don't think so.
I'm guessing code was probably literally like it shows up half the time or something.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Because in a speedrunning sense, for like speedrunning the open mountain, you want him to show up so that you can get as much cash to buy upgrades to speed up the whole process. And like that was a big one for me. I'm like trying to figure out like when he's gonna show up, when he's not, because some tracks you have to go out of your way to get him. And if you knew like he's not gonna show up this time because it's raining or something like that, then like that would save time. But have you watched any of the speed runs?
I've watched a few on YouTube. Yeah. Definitely nostalgic seeing all the tracks and stuff. Like, to me, it was sort of not shocking, but I was like, whoa, the draw-in is so like, I thought at the time we had done a better job, right? But it is what it is, right? It would just, we tried to be as efficient as we could, but I sort of have to rethink back to that time frame where I'm like, oh, wait a minute. A lot of games had this problem, right?
Yeah, they had the same. When it's a PS1 game, like the drawback doesn't. Yeah, some people like when they come back to play it and they've been so used to racing games where they can see like a mile away, and they're like, "Whoa, this drawing's like crazy." But I'm just like, why do you need to see that far in the first place? I mean, like everything that you're like reacting to is right here. So you're not even like worried about the drawing. And the fog series is basically like a way to, what are you going to say?
Oh, sorry. I think we had the fog as well, like as an extra gameplay element.
Yeah.
But I think at the time, probably like, we'll hide the fact that people can't see as much, right?
That's why I think the fog series was kind of thrown in there for like extra playtime, and it just made the like the drawing not look as like so sharp and jarring. Yeah, but I mean, the fog series looks good just because it looks smooth. If maybe if they just didn't have that crazy drawing, just had a little more fog to it, so it's kind of like hazy. Yeah, it would look nice. But yeah, I think we got enough information. I can, like I said, I can stay here all day, but I know you your kid's waiting. I got a puppy that's like, I left her downstairs with some treats. I don't know what she's into now. Hoping she's been put to sleep from it, but thanks, Terry, for taking the time, and like I'd hope keep in contact. I would love to shoot some ideas at you and just kind of just bounce off, and because I would love to, as much as you said like the game's not gonna get a remaster, if I can find some people that are like-minded that want to work on something that's similar, like in Sledstorm, like physics-wise. The physics engine is basically what would translate into the remaster, a new like snowmobile racing game, because there's nothing. What's that?
If I had a suggestion, there would be to like, just kind of like at a grassroots level, without like, I got to find all these people, is like learn how to use Unity, right? And build, just because there's even like sort of what do you call it, pre-made templates or plugins with like racing game, like physics thing. Like you could at least use that as a start to try to like build out of that. And then custom, right, as you go. But like, so when I was working at the indie studio, like our game was Unity based, right? So it was like, it was much more, and then we could customize it, but it was like, it was much more approachable, and you could at least get something started, right?
Yeah, I've messed around with Unity a little bit. I'm having issues with the whole like rigging and like colliders because of the it's technically one wheel. It's not multiple wheels, because you have like just the sled tread is a giant wheel and it's elongated. So like, I don't know how to stretch that to be right, and then the texture underneath, or like the physics to be pressed. A lot of things. I'm not in game development, and that's the thing. I'm more of like photography and graphic design. But I'd love to learn more. I need to take like some class if I can find one. But that's that would be really fun to get started on that. But track design would be probably my strong suit. But I'm sure the physics on a sled takes a long time to rig and everything.
Yeah, I remember most of that was done before I had even started. Like a big portion of that was already established with that first prototype. So for me, it was like, great, I'll just add this stuff on top of it and it'll still work. Right?
What was the name of the guy that made the physics engine for Sledstorm?
Tom Heath.
Tom Heath. Okay.
Heath. Heath. And I'm not sure where he's at now, but he was in the UK.
I would love to talk to him if I could get in contact, but someday maybe. All right, Terry. Well, I'll let you go. But thanks, man. It's been a lot of fun.
And if I find anything else, out of the archives, I'll let you know.
Yeah. All right. See you, man. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks.